Maya Rodriguez had worked at Thompson's Hardware for 3 years, and she knew every bolt, screw, and paint can in the store like the back of her hand. The small-town hardware store had been her refuge after dropping out of college when her father died unexpectedly, leaving her family drowning in medical debt. At 22, she was the youngest employee but also the most knowledgeable, often helping customers solve complex problems that left even the veteran workers scratching their heads. The store owner, Bill Thompson, was a gruff man in his 60s who had inherited the business from his father. He appreciated Maya's work ethic and problem-solving skills, but his son Derek was a different story entirely. Derek Thompson, 28 and freshly returned from what he called his business adventures in the city, had been appointed as the new manager 6 months ago. Where Maya had earned her position through dedication and expertise, Derek had simply been handed his through nepotism. Derek was everything Maya despised about entitled people. He spent most of his time in the back office playing games on his phone, leaving Maya and the other employees to handle the customers. When he did emerge, it was usually to micromanage or take credit for sales that Maya had worked hard to secure. She had watched him charm customers with his fake smile and practiced handshake, then retreat to his office while she handled the actual work of helping people find what they needed. The breaking point came on a busy Saturday morning in November. Maya was helping Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who needed specific hardware to repair her late husband's handmade bird feeder. The project was clearly important to her, and Maya spent nearly an hour helping her select the right screws, washers, and wood stain. Mrs. Patterson was so grateful that she asked to speak to the manager to commend Maya's exceptional service. Derek emerged from his office, straightening his tie and putting on his customer service persona. Maya watched as Mrs. Patterson explained how helpful Maya had been, how she had gone above and beyond to ensure everything was perfect. Derek nodded and smiled, thanking Mrs. Patterson for her business. But then, as Maya began to ring up the purchase, Derek smoothly stepped in. "Actually, Mrs. Patterson, I'm the one who selected all these items for you," Derek said with a practiced smile. "Maya here is still learning the ropes, but I made sure you got exactly what you needed. I take personal responsibility for every customer's satisfaction." Maya's jaw dropped. Mrs. Patterson looked confused, glancing between Maya and Derek. Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger, but she couldn't correct him in front of the customer without causing a scene. Derek completed the transaction himself, accepting Mrs. Patterson's thanks and praise with false modesty. After Mrs. Patterson left, Maya confronted Derek in the stockroom. "You just took credit for an hour of my work," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "That's not right, and you know it." Derek shrugged, not even looking up from his phone. "I'm the manager, Maya. Everything that happens in this store reflects on me. If you want credit, maybe you should work on getting promoted instead of just complaining about it." Maya stared at him, realizing that this wasn't just about one incident. This was about Derek's complete lack of respect for her and the other employees. She had been documenting his behavior for months, but this was the final straw. She knew she had to do something, but she also knew she couldn't afford to lose her job. Her family still needed her income, and jobs were scarce in their small town. That evening, Maya sat in her small apartment, laptop open, researching her options. She had always been good with technology, a skill that had served her well in helping customers with modern power tools and smart home devices. As she browsed through employment law websites and Reddit forums, an idea began to form. Derek might have the title and the family connections, but Maya had something more valuable: the respect of the customers and the knowledge of how the store really operated. She began to formulate a plan that would expose Derek's incompetence while protecting her own position. It would require patience, documentation, and perfect timing. But Maya had learned that sometimes the best revenge wasn't getting mad, it was getting even, and doing it so cleverly that the target never saw it coming. The next morning, Maya arrived at work with a new sense of purpose. She greeted Derek with her usual professionalism, but inside, she was already putting her plan into motion. She had decided that if Derek wanted to take credit for her work, she would give him exactly what he deserved, and she would make sure everyone knew exactly who was responsible for what happened next. Maya started by being more observant than ever before. She began keeping detailed notes of Derek's behavior, his mistakes, and most importantly, his complete lack of knowledge about the products they sold. She documented every time he gave incorrect advice to customers, every time he left early or came in late, and every time he took credit for work that wasn't his. But she was careful to do this discreetly, using her phone's voice recorder app during conversations and keeping her written notes at home. Her plan was simple but brilliant. She would let Derek's own incompetence destroy him, but she would make sure it happened in the most public and embarrassing way possible. The opportunity came sooner than she expected, and when it did, Maya was ready to take the shot that would change everything. The hardware store's annual customer appreciation event was scheduled for the first weekend in December. It was the biggest event of the year, where local contractors, DIY enthusiasts, and regular customers would gather for demonstrations, special sales, and door prizes. Bill Thompson always used this event to showcase his store's expertise and build relationships with their most important customers. Derek, of course, had volunteered to be the main presenter for the power tool demonstration, despite having no real experience with most of the equipment. Maya had suggested that she could handle the demonstration since she had actually used all the tools and could answer technical questions. But Derek had dismissed her suggestion with a wave of his hand. The customers want to see management taking charge, he had said. Besides, how hard can it be? I'll just read the manual beforehand. Maya had simply nodded and smiled, but inside she was thrilled. Derek was about to walk into a trap of his own making, and she was going to make sure he fell hard. She spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the event, but not in the way Derek expected. While he was presumably reading manuals, Maya was reaching out to some of their most knowledgeable customers, including several professional contractors who had been coming to the store for years. She casually mentioned to these customers that Derek would be doing a comprehensive power tool demonstration, and that he was looking forward to answering any technical questions they might have. She phrased it in a way that seemed supportive, but she knew these contractors well enough to know they would come prepared with detailed, complex questions about torque specifications, blade compatibility, and safety protocols. The day of the event arrived, and Maya watched as Derek prepared for his presentation. He looked confident and polished in his pressed shirt and tie, but Maya could see the nervous energy in his movements. He had clearly done some preparation, but Maya knew that no amount of last-minute cramming could substitute for real experience and knowledge. The crowd gathered around the demonstration area was impressive. Bill Thompson stood proudly at the back, excited to see his son take charge of the family business. Maya positioned herself where she could see everything clearly, her phone ready to record what she was certain would be Derek's spectacular failure. Derek began with confidence, introducing himself and talking about the store's commitment to quality and customer service. He picked up a circular saw and began explaining its features, reading directly from the specifications sheet. So far, so good, Maya thought. But then the questions started. What's the maximum depth cut on that model when you're cutting at a 45-degree angle? Asked Mike Sullivan, a local contractor who had been building houses for 30 years. Derek's confidence wavered slightly. Well, let me check the specifications here, he said, fumbling with the paperwork. Also, added another contractor, what's the difference between the carbide-tipped blade you've got on there and the diamond blade? When would you use one versus the other? Maya watched as Derek's face began to redden. He was clearly out of his depth, making up answers that anyone with real experience would know were wrong. The contractors exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from curiosity to skepticism. But Maya wasn't content to just watch Derek embarrass himself. She had planned something much more dramatic, something that would expose his incompetence in a way that couldn't be ignored or explained away. The moment came when Derek decided to actually demonstrate cutting a piece of wood with the circular saw. Maya had been waiting for this moment for 2 weeks. The night before, she had stayed late at the store, ostensibly to help set up for the event. What she had actually done was carefully adjust the saw's settings in a way that would be safe, but would create a very obvious problem when Derek tried to use it. She had loosened the blade guard slightly and adjusted the cutting depth to an inappropriate setting for the demonstration wood. When Derek pulled the trigger, the saw immediately bound up in the wood, kicking back violently. Derek, who had clearly never experienced kickback before, lost control of the saw and stumbled backward. The saw was still running, and as Derek tried to regain his balance, it cut through the extension cord powering the demonstration setup. The crowd gasped as sparks flew and the power cut out to the entire demonstration area. Derek stood there, still holding the now silent saw, his face pale and his hands shaking. The professional contractors in the crowd immediately knew what had happened: improper technique, wrong settings, and a complete failure to follow basic safety protocols. "Jesus Christ," Mike Sullivan said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He could have killed someone. That's exactly what you're not supposed to do with a circular saw." Maya watched as Derek's humiliation deepened. Bill Thompson pushed through the crowd, his face a mixture of anger and embarrassment. "Derek, what the hell happened here?" he demanded. The saw malfunctioned," Derek stammered. "It wasn't my fault. The equipment must be defective." But Maya was ready for this moment. She stepped forward, her voice calm and professional. "Actually, Derek, the saw is working perfectly. The problem is that you had the cutting depth set too deep for the material, and you didn't maintain proper control during the cut. That's why you experienced kickback." She moved to the saw and quickly adjusted the settings, then picked up a replacement piece of wood. "Would you like me to demonstrate the proper technique?" she asked, her tone helpful but with just a hint of challenge. Derek's face went from pale to red. "That's not necessary, Maya. I can handle this." "Are you sure?" asked Mike Sullivan, his tone skeptical. "Because that kickback could have seriously injured someone. Maybe we should let someone who knows what they're doing finish the demonstration." Maya felt a surge of satisfaction as she saw Derek's authority crumble before her eyes. This was exactly what she had planned for, not just to embarrass him, but to demonstrate to everyone present that he was not qualified to be in charge of anything, let alone a business that dealt with dangerous equipment. Bill Thompson looked around at the crowd of customers, many of whom were shaking their heads or whispering to each other. Maya could see him doing the math in his head. These were important customers, and his son had just made the store look incompetent and dangerous. "Maya, please finish the demonstration," Bill said finally, his voice tight with controlled anger. Maya nodded professionally and took the saw from Derek's hands. She quickly demonstrated the proper technique, explaining each step clearly and answering the contractor's questions with the expertise that came from years of actual experience. The demonstration went smoothly, and by the end, the crowd was applauding her knowledge and skill. But Maya wasn't finished. She had spent too much time planning this moment to let it end with just one demonstration. As the crowd began to disperse, she approached several of the contractors who had been asking questions. "I'm sorry about what happened with the saw," she said quietly. "Derek is still learning the equipment. If you have any technical questions about the tools or need advice on specific projects, please don't hesitate to ask me. I've been working with these tools for years, and I'm always happy to help." The contractors nodded appreciatively, and Maya could see that she had accomplished something important. She had not only exposed Derek's incompetence, but had also positioned herself as the real expert in the store. The customers now knew who to trust, and that knowledge would be invaluable in the weeks to come. As the event wound down, Maya watched Derek slumped in a chair, his confidence completely shattered. Bill Thompson was having a heated conversation with him in the corner, and Maya could see that Derek was on the receiving end of a very serious lecture about safety, competence, and responsibility. Maya cleaned up the demonstration area, her mind already working on the next phase of her plan. The power tool incident had been perfect, but she knew that Derek wouldn't go down without a fight. He would probably try to blame her for the equipment malfunction or claim that she had somehow sabotaged him. But Maya had been careful to document everything, and she had witnesses to Derek's incompetence. More importantly, she had established herself as the person the customers trusted, and in a small-town business like Thompson's Hardware, customer trust was everything. Over the next few days, Maya noticed a shift in the store's dynamics. Customers who had witnessed the demonstration began asking specifically for her help, even when Derek was available. Word spread quickly in their small town, and Maya found herself fielding calls from contractors who wanted to make sure she would be available to help them with their projects. Derek, meanwhile, seemed to have lost much of his swagger. He spent even more time in his office, emerging only when absolutely necessary. When he did interact with customers, Maya noticed that he was much more careful about what he said, often deferring to Maya's expertise rather than trying to answer technical questions himself. But Maya knew that this was just the beginning. Derek still had his father's support, and he still had the title of manager. If she wanted to create real change, she would need to be more strategic about how she proceeded. She had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. The opportunity for the next phase of her plan came when Bill Thompson announced that the store would be participating in a large construction project for the new community center. It was a significant contract that would require coordinating with multiple contractors and suppliers, and it would be a major test of the store's capabilities. Derek immediately volunteered to manage the project, seeing it as an opportunity to redeem himself after the power tool incident. Maya watched him announce his plans with his characteristic overconfidence, promising delivery schedules and specifications that Maya knew would be impossible to meet. This time, Maya didn't need to sabotage anything. She simply let Derek make his promises, documented everything he said, and began preparing for the inevitable disaster. She knew that when Derek's plans fell apart, she would be ready to step in and save the day. And when that happened, everyone would know exactly who was really qualified to run Thompson's hardware. The construction project was supposed to begin in January, giving Derek 6 weeks to organize materials, coordinate with suppliers, and ensure that everything was ready for the contractors. Maya watched as Derek dove into the project with his usual combination of enthusiasm and incompetence, making decisions based on assumptions rather than actual knowledge. Derek's first major mistake was in ordering materials. He had calculated the quantities based on the building plans, but he had failed to account for waste, cutting errors, and the fact that contractors typically order 10 to 15% more materials than the theoretical minimum. Maya had tried to point this out during a staff meeting, but Derek had dismissed her concerns. "I've done the math, Maya," he had said condescendingly. "I know you mean well, but this is exactly the kind of project management they taught us in business school. We don't need to pad the numbers just because that's how it's always been done." Maya had simply nodded and made a note in her phone. She knew that Derek's business school education consisted of 2 years at a community college before he dropped out to pursue his entrepreneurial ventures. But she wasn't about to correct him in front of the staff. The second mistake was in the delivery schedule. Derek had promised that all materials would be delivered to the job site on specific dates, coordinated with the contractors' schedules. What he hadn't realized was that their suppliers often had their own delays, and that weather, transportation issues, and inventory problems could easily disrupt even the best-laid plans. Maya had been working with these suppliers for 3 years, and she knew their reliability patterns better than anyone. She knew which suppliers always delivered on time, which ones padded their delivery estimates, and which ones were notorious for last-minute delays. Derek, however, had simply accepted the supplier's initial estimates without any consideration for their track record. By mid-December, Maya could see that the project was heading for disaster. Derek was becoming increasingly stressed as he realized that his carefully planned schedule was beginning to fall apart. Suppliers were calling with delays. Contractors were asking questions that Derek couldn't answer, and Bill Thompson was starting to ask pointed questions about the project's status. Maya continued to document everything, but she also began quietly reaching out to the contractors and suppliers involved in the project. She didn't criticize Derek directly, but she made it clear that she was available to help with any issues that arose. She positioned herself as a backup resource, someone who could step in if needed. The first major crisis came just after New Year's Day. The lumber supplier called to inform Derek that a shipment of specialized beams had been delayed by 3 weeks due to a production issue at the mill. Derek panicked, realizing that this delay would push back the entire construction schedule. He spent the day making frantic phone calls, trying to find alternative suppliers who could deliver the beams on time. But Maya knew that he was going about it all wrong. He was calling suppliers at random, explaining the situation as an emergency, and asking for rush orders that would cost significantly more than the original budget. Maya waited until Derek had exhausted his options, then quietly made a single phone call to Jim Martinez, a supplier she had worked with on several previous projects. Jim owed Maya a favor from a time when she had helped him resolve a billing dispute, and he was willing to provide the beams at short notice for only a small premium. When Maya approached Derek with the solution, he was initially suspicious. "How did you find a supplier when I couldn't?" he asked. "I've been working with Jim for 3 years," Maya replied simply. "He knows that when I call, it's for a legitimate need, not just poor planning. He's willing to help us out because we've built a relationship based on trust and reliability." Derek was forced to accept Maya's solution, but she could see that it bothered him to be dependent on her connections. He took credit for resolving the crisis when he reported to his father, but Maya didn't mind. She knew that the contractors and suppliers involved in the project were starting to see the reality of who was actually getting things done. The next crisis came 2 weeks later, when the electrical contractor called with questions about the specifications for the community center's lighting system. Derek had provided them with the basic information from the building plans, but the contractor needed details about load requirements, circuit configurations, and compatibility with the existing electrical infrastructure. Derek spent 2 hours on the phone with the contractor, clearly struggling to answer technical questions that were beyond his expertise. Maya listened from the next room as Derek promised to call back with the information, clearly stalling for time so he could research the answers. But Maya had already anticipated this problem. She had spent her lunch break the previous week meeting with the electrical contractor to review the specifications and ensure that everything was compatible with the store's available inventory. She had the answers Derek needed, but she decided to wait and see how he would handle the situation. Derek spent the rest of the day researching electrical specifications, making calls to manufacturers, and trying to figure out information that Maya could have provided in 5 minutes. When he finally called the contractor back, he gave answers that were technically correct but overly complicated and expensive. The contractor called Maya directly the next day. Your manager is making this project way more complicated than it needs to be, he said. I've worked with you before, and I know you understand electrical systems. Can you help me figure out what we actually need? Maya met with the contractor that evening, after the store had closed. She provided him with simplified specifications that would meet the project's needs while keeping costs reasonable. The contractor was grateful for her help and relieved to work with someone who understood both the technical requirements and the practical constraints of the project. Word of Maya's problem-solving abilities spread quickly among the contractors working on the community center project. Soon, she was fielding calls and emails from various tradespeople who needed clarification on materials, specifications, or delivery schedules. Derek remained the official project manager, but Maya was becoming the person everyone actually relied on to get things done. The final crisis came in early February, when Derek discovered that he had significantly underestimated the cost of the project. His initial budget calculations had been based on theoretical quantities and list prices, without accounting for the various complications and changes that inevitably arise during construction projects. When Derek presented the budget overrun to his father, Bill Thompson was furious. The project was now estimated to cost 30% more than originally promised, and the delay in materials had pushed the completion date back by 6 weeks. For a small hardware store, this kind of cost overrun could be financially devastating. Maya watched as Derek tried to explain the situation to his father, blaming suppliers, contractors, and unforeseen circumstances for the problems. But Bill Thompson had been in the hardware business for 40 years, and he knew that good project management could have prevented most of these issues. "Derek, this is unacceptable," Bill said, his voice tight with anger. "We promised these people a specific price and timeline, and now we're going to look like amateurs. How do you propose we fix this?" Derek stammered through various excuses and half-formed solutions, but it was clear that he was out of his depth. Maya could see that this was her moment, the opportunity she had been waiting for to demonstrate her value to the business. She stepped forward, her manner calm and professional. "Mr. Thompson, I think I can help resolve this situation," she said. "I've been working closely with the contractors and suppliers on this project, and I believe we can bring the costs back in line with the original budget." Bill Thompson looked at her with interest. "How?" Maya had prepared for this moment, and she presented her solution with confidence. She had identified several areas where Derek's inexperience had led to unnecessary expenses. Premium materials where standard grades would suffice, rush orders that could be avoided with better planning, and redundant specifications that added cost without adding value. "I've also negotiated some adjustments with our suppliers," Maya continued. Jim Martinez is willing to provide the remaining lumber at a discount in exchange for a guaranteed payment schedule. The electrical contractor has agreed to use some alternative components that will meet the specifications, but cost 20% less. And I've found a way to adjust the delivery schedule that will eliminate most of the rush charges. Bill Thompson listened carefully to Maya's proposal, asking detailed questions about costs, timelines, and quality standards. Maya answered each question with the expertise that came from years of hands-on experience, providing specific examples and referencing her relationships with the various contractors and suppliers. When Maya finished her presentation, Bill Thompson was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at his son, who was standing quietly in the corner, clearly embarrassed by his own inadequacy. "Derek, I want you to work with Maya on implementing these changes," Bill said finally. "And I want you to learn from how she approaches these problems. This young woman has just saved our reputation and possibly our business." Maya felt a surge of satisfaction as she saw Derek's face flush with embarrassment, but she was careful to remain professional and gracious. "I'm happy to help, Mr. Thompson. We're all working toward the same goal, making this project successful and maintaining our reputation in the community." Over the next few weeks, Maya took the lead on managing the community center project while Derek nominally remained in charge. She coordinated with suppliers, answered contractors' questions, and ensured that materials were delivered on schedule and within budget. The project, which had been heading for disaster under Derek's management, was transformed into a showcase of efficiency and professionalism. The contractors working on the project began to spread word about Maya's expertise and helpfulness. They recommended Thompson's hardware to other projects, specifically asking for Maya's assistance. The store's reputation, which had been damaged by Derek's early mistakes, was not only restored but enhanced by Maya's competent handling of the crisis. Derek, meanwhile, seemed to retreat further into his office. He still held the title of manager, but everyone in the store knew that Maya was the one who really understood the business. Customers asked for her by name, suppliers preferred to work with her, and even Bill Thompson began consulting with her directly on important decisions. Maya had achieved her goal of exposing Derek's incompetence, but she had done it in a way that benefited the entire business. She had proven that competence and expertise were more valuable than titles and family connections. The shot she had taken at Derek's credibility had found its target, and now everyone knew who really deserved to be in charge. As the community center project neared completion, Maya began to think about her future at Thompson's Hardware. She had proven herself capable of handling major projects and managing complex relationships with contractors and suppliers. She had earned the respect of customers, coworkers, and even Bill Thompson himself. But she knew that Derek still had his father's support, and that family loyalty might override business logic when it came to important decisions. If she wanted to truly advance her career, she would need to be strategic about how she approached the next phase of her plan. The opportunity came when Bill Thompson announced that he was considering opening a second location on the other side of town. The new store would focus on serving the growing residential development in that area, and it would need a manager who understood both the business and the local market. Maya saw this as her chance to finally step out of Derek's shadow and prove that she was ready for real leadership responsibility. She began preparing a comprehensive proposal for the new store, drawing on everything she had learned about customer service, inventory management, and project coordination. Her proposal was detailed and professional, addressing location analysis, staffing requirements, inventory selection, and marketing strategies. She presented financial projections based on her understanding of the local market and her relationships with contractors and suppliers. Most importantly, she demonstrated how her expertise and reputation could be leveraged to make the new store successful from day one. When Maya presented her proposal to Bill Thompson, she could see that he was impressed by her thoroughness and professionalism. He asked pointed questions about her projections and assumptions, but Maya was prepared for every inquiry. She had done her homework and it showed. "This is excellent work, Maya," Bill said when she finished her presentation. "You've clearly put a lot of thought into this. Let me discuss it with Derek and see how we want to proceed." Maya nodded, but inside she was confident that Derek would not be able to match the quality and detail of her proposal. She had spent weeks preparing, drawing on her extensive knowledge of the business and her relationships with key customers and suppliers. Derek, if he bothered to prepare a proposal at all, would likely produce something superficial and generic. A week later, Bill Thompson called Maya into his office for a private meeting. Derek was conspicuously absent, and Maya suspected that this was a conversation his father didn't want him to overhear. "Maya, I've been thinking about our conversation regarding the new store," Bill began. "Your proposal was impressive, and it's clear that you have a deep understanding of our business and our customers. I also can't ignore the fact that you've been instrumental in salvaging the community center project." Maya waited, sensing that Bill was working up to something important. "I'm going to be honest with you," Bill continued. "Derek is my son, and I love him, but he's not ready for the kind of responsibility that running a business requires. He's got book learning, but he doesn't have the practical experience or the customer relationships that you've built." Maya felt her heart racing, but she kept her expression neutral and professional. "I'd like to offer you the position of manager for the new store," Bill said. "You would have full authority over operations, staffing, and inventory decisions. It would be your store to run as you see fit, and your success would be measured by results, not by politics or family connections. Maya felt a wave of triumph wash over her. This was exactly what she had been working toward, an opportunity to prove herself on her own terms, without Derek's interference or incompetence holding her back. "I accept, Mr. Thompson," Maya said, trying to keep the excitement out of her voice. "I promise you won't regret this decision." Bill Thompson smiled. "I know I won't. You've earned this opportunity, Maya. You've shown that you understand what it takes to run a successful business, and you've proven that you can handle difficult situations with professionalism and competence." As Maya left Bill Thompson's office, she felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond just getting a promotion. She had faced a situation where she was undervalued and disrespected, and she had fought back using intelligence, strategy, and hard work. She had exposed Derek's incompetence not through sabotage or gossip, but by demonstrating her own superior abilities. The shot she had taken at Derek's credibility had been carefully aimed and perfectly executed. She had let him destroy himself while positioning herself as the solution to the problems he created. Now she would have the opportunity to run her own store, build her own team, and prove that competence and dedication were more valuable than titles and family connections. Derek's reaction to the news was predictable. He was angry and resentful, claiming that Maya had somehow manipulated the situation or that his father was making a mistake. But his protests fell on deaf ears. Everyone in the store, from the stock clerks to the customers, knew that Maya deserved the promotion. As Maya prepared for her new role, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She had started as a young woman struggling to support her family after her father's death. She had worked hard, learned the business, and earned the respect of everyone around her. When she faced injustice and disrespect, she had fought back strategically and professionally. The shot that changed everything wasn't a single moment of drama or confrontation. It was a carefully planned campaign that exposed the truth about competence, character, and leadership. Maya had proven that in the end, results matter more than relationships, and that the best revenge is not just getting even, but getting ahead. Her new store would be a testament to everything she had learned and accomplished. It would be a place where hard work was rewarded, where competence was valued over connections, and where customers could trust that they were getting honest advice from people who truly understood their needs. Maya Rodriguez had started as an employee at Thompson's Hardware, but she was ending as a business owner in her own right. The shot that changed everything had been fired not with anger or spite, but with precision, patience, and unwavering professionalism. And now, as she prepared to open her own store, Maya knew that she had won not just a battle, but a war that would define the rest of her career. The new Thompson's Hardware East opened 6 months later, with Maya as the manager and majority partner. The store was an immediate success, drawing customers from across the region who had heard about Maya's expertise and customer service. Within a year, it was generating more revenue than the original store, and Maya had proven that her success was no accident. Derek remained at the original store, but his authority was significantly reduced. Bill Thompson had learned from the community center project that his son's limitations were real and consequential. Derek was given responsibilities that matched his actual abilities, while Maya's success at the new store demonstrated what real leadership looked like. The shot that changed everything had been fired with perfect accuracy, and Maya Rodriguez had emerged as the victor in a battle that had been fought with intelligence, strategy, and unwavering professionalism. She had proven that in the end, competence and character matter more than titles and family connections, and that the best revenge is not just getting even, but getting ahead.